Mr. Lang, you were the chairman of the session yesterday, the Jubilee session, which discussed how the tax system would look in 25 years. So what is the consensus? Is it going to be radically different?
Well, it's difficult to talk about the consensus. First of all, I have to admit the seminar was for me as a chairman a great learning experience, because I was in the privileged situation that I really had a very experienced panel. People coming from all over the world joined the panel, and we also had speakers from the audience who came from different parts of the world, and they really contributed a lot. So I have to admit, first of all, I really learned a lot during this seminar. And I think we saw that in many aspects we have throughout the world a lot of similarities, a lot of comparable developments, but also a lot of differences. So one of the first things we discussed during the seminar was the relation between direct and indirect taxation. And of course, it's kind of obvious that VAT, also VAT is a rather young tax, but we have it now in more than 150 countries. And the question was, does that mean that maybe in 25 years we only will have VAT or other indirect taxes, and direct taxes might completely disappear? But I think the answer was not really like that. I think the answer was, by most of the people, that VAT will become more important, even more important than it is now, on the one hand. But on the other hand, corporate tax will not disappear, because governments are desperate for revenues, so therefore they need corporate taxes as well. Tax rates in corporate taxation have decreased over the years, but that has not necessarily meant in all countries that the revenues from corporate taxes have declined, because at the same time the tax base has been broadened. So this was one issue we discussed. The other issue we discussed during the seminar, when we looked a closer look at VAT, was the question, will we have a harmonized VAT system? And here people were quite skeptical if this will going to be happen, because right now we have in many countries a lot of exemptions, we have different rates, and there are kind of good policy reasons also why this is the case. Also, it makes the application of the system quite complicated, but of course there is always the element of regressivity when we talk about VAT, so therefore there seems to be a need by certain policymakers and by certain decision makers to have lower tax rates and to have a lot of exemptions. So probably we will have to live with different types of VAT systems. Also, I think, that's my personal view, that this will be a problem also in the future, because we might end up with a lot of double taxation issues in the area of VAT which have to be solved. So this was a second element of our discussion. We had also another element in our discussion, and that was transfer pricing, exactly. And yeah, I think difficult to say if there was a consensus, but
the question was whether the arm's length principle would survive after 25 years.
Yeah, and I think one of the speakers made a very good statement in that respect, namely whether, or the statement was that maybe the term will survive, but not the principle. And I think many people had the idea, and I have a lot of sympathy with that, that in the future maybe there will not so much be of a difference between dealing at arm's length and formula systems, because those formula systems, they creep into the arm's length principle over time. So therefore, in the future maybe we will not have that many differences in that respect. So this was another element of our discussion. Then we also discussed about possible new taxes. In many areas of the world we have new environmental taxes. In particular in Europe we have new financial taxes, we have bank taxes, we have financial transaction taxes, which don't seem to be so popular in other parts of the world. So here we have very different developments.
There was also a discussion on carbon tax.